Hi, everybody. Well, we're live. This is the first show, I guess you could say, of our wrestling series. It's me, Steve, and I am joined. It's my great pleasure to be joined by my friend Doc Gregory, who is a veteran of the indie wrestling scene, the greatest referee in indie wrestling.
Oh,
Uh,
you make me blush. You make me blush. Yeah, I've been doing the wrestling thing in the independent area around the Maryland, Pennsylvania, um, Delaware, Virginia, just around our four states up and down the East Coast for probably about 20 years. I trained right here in Hagerstown, Maryland, under the tutelage of actually Neil, the Power Superior, who is no longer with us. But I was one of the last classes trained by him, also by his assistant trainer, Sexy Shane Shadows, who is, basically like probably like my real brother to me, more than most family. But I love the guy. I can't say no to him. He's a great guy.
yeah, yeah. It's cool because Doc, we actually got to know each other because we're both atheists and we agree on that. And then it turned out you had this great wrestling background, and I'm like this huge wrestling fan, so it's like this perfect, thing we have in common. Because one of the things that is kind of cool, but at the same time kind of shitty about being a wrestling fan, is that at least in my experience, you want to talk about it like all the time. Like you're
Hmm.
always thinking about it. You're always wanting to talk about it. And when it's on and you're watching it, whether you're at a live show or you're watching it on TV, you're just overflowing with opinions and things you like and things you don't like, and it's hard to not talk about it. But if someone's not a wrestling fan, most of the time they just don't want to hear about it. They're not interested in it, you know. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show, not just because I wanted to do something with you and because I just love talking wrestling, but whenever I do talk wrestling in my other video series, like especially in the You Had to Ask series where I answer people's questions that they submit, people who know I'm a wrestling fan and are fans themselves will ask wrestling questions, and it's like everybody else sort of just has to either fast forward past that question or sit there and listen to me talk about something that they don't give a shit about.
Yeah, I've,
So
I've I've actually gone through a lot of your You Had to Ask videos, and I've seen all these wrestling questions, and I always like to hear what you have to say about those. But then I troll through some of the comments and everything. So yeah, I see what you get from talking about wrestling, and we are a dime a dozen. On my job, I probably run into 100 different people, but 15 or so of them are hardcore wrestling fans and want to talk to me about it every single time they see me because they know that's what I do.
right, right. And I mean, one of the things I said in the description for this, it's like it's the one thing that the internet was missing is two more guys talking about wrestling. But so I mean, not only are wrestling fans a dime a dozen, but wrestling fans who bitch about wrestling on the internet are a dime a dozen. I mean,
Hmm.
it's kind of weird. It's like what a wrestling fan does is bitches about wrestling.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I go to I'm a fan of the WWE on Facebook, and of course they make posts from time to time, and I'll look at the comment section, and it's like here are all these people who religiously watch WWE, and all they can do is complain about how WWE don't know what the hell they're doing.
Right, right. And I want to do. I mean, obviously, at least I know from my end and probably from your end as well. Today and throughout the course of this series, we're going to talk about shit that we saw that we didn't like, but I also want to try to accentuate the positive a little bit because there are times when you read wrestling fans on forums or when you listen to podcasts that are done like by wrestling fans, you wonder like why the fuck do we even watch this stuff if we
Mhm.
hate it so much? Like if we don't find anything right with it, why do we even watch it? So in the midst of all the bitching and complaining, I do want to make sure that we point out the good stuff too, because we're going to talk about the most recent episode of Raw that aired last night for probably a lot of this. And there was a lot about last night's Raw that I didn't really care for, but there were also some things that I really liked as a fan that really, despite all the issues that I've had with WWE and their creative direction over the last 6 months or so, there are some things that they are doing right, I think, in my opinion, and that do give me real reason to be hopeful or excited or something to watch on the show. and think, oh, that's good. You know, that's a reason why I watch. You know, so we want to keep an eye for that stuff too. We don't want to just be bitchy wrestling fans.
Did you see I just pulled a Mark Rubio? Yeah, I leaned off the camera and take a drink.
No, you can do it right on camera, buddy.
Well, I am trying out these. Well, I am trying out, and this is not I'm not advertising here, but I am trying out the Red's Apple Ale, and I think that's pretty good. And I'm quite fond of the brand new Red Strawberry Ale. That's actually pretty good too. So these are. I figured I'd go ahead and down these two before the wife gets home and realizes I drank the rest of the beer.
Unpaid product placement. Hey, you know, I'm actually drinking a beer too, because I guess that's just what we do. I'm drinking a Yingling, which is my usual brand, and I actually have to give a shout out to my wife too, because she was about to drink this Yingling, and then when she realized it was the last one and that I wanted one for the show, she very graciously allowed me to take the last Yingling. So.
That's actually awesome of Ashley. I'm just a downright bastard. I didn't even ask. I just took them. Like, these are my beers now.
Yeah, I'm taking the last beer, just so you know. So anyway, and then there's also I put up a question on my Facebook page that we can talk a little bit about it, to sort of invite some fan interaction. The question of the week. We're going to just try to get this over as a gimmick. I don't know if it'll take or not, but. The question of the week for this first episode was, if you were magically placed in charge of creative in WWE, what would some of your New Year's resolutions for 2014 be? What would you want to continue doing? What would you want to change, etc.? So we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But first, I want to talk about Raw, because I figure we'll probably do this on Tuesdays most weeks. So Raw will be fresh in our minds, and Raw is like the big show. It's the only show that WWE seems to really care about in terms of storyline development and things. So last night was Old School Raw, and it's always kind of a fun show. It's kind of different. So what did you think of Old School Raw this year?
I thought it was pretty good. I mean, a lot of the guys that were old school I've worked with in the past. I love seeing that Nikolai was there, and you know, I recently had the opportunity to work with Ric Flair, and he was on the show. I don't know, really couldn't tell you how many drinks he had before he went out there, but from the last little bit of trouble he got into, he probably didn't have too much to drink, but you know, he is Ric Flair. He's going to have a drink whether you like it or not. DiBiase, IRS, good to see Money Inc. there. Scotty 2 Hottie still pulling off the worm with Too Cool.
Yeah, I thought Scotty looked great.
And of course, we'll probably get into it later tonight. The biggest surprise of the evening, of course, I follow him on Facebook and on DDP's yoga channel. Yeah. But wow, that was a surprise all in all, and I thought it went over very well. But we'll get into that later.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about that now. Actually, I mean, we can go through a lot of what happened on the show, but Jake the Snake, came out for the final spot after the main event, and you love Jake the Snake. I know I've said many times in videos and on Facebook shit that I think Jake the Snake is the best promo guy ever. I think he gave in his prime, he gave the best interviews, whether he was babyface or whether he was a heel. He was just amazing, and nobody working today, even like the really good guys like CM Punk and Cena and Rock, and you know, guys who you could point to and say, oh, that guy can cut a good promo. Nobody today can touch Jake, as far as I'm concerned. He was just the master of talking on the microphone, and yeah, his own personal story for the last, I guess it's been like over a year now, you know, of going and living with Diamond Dallas Page and doing the DDP yoga thing and getting sober and getting healthy and losing weight and getting off drugs and alcohol. I mean, that whole thing is, you know, talk about something that makes you feel optimistic and makes you feel good about being a wrestling fan. I mean, Jake was one of those guys who was like on the death watch. You were like, every time you heard that a wrestler died, you were thinking, oh man, I hope it's not Jake. And now, I mean, at least for the last year or so, he really seems to have finally pulled himself together. And man, he looked great last night, and it was so great to see him. I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, he looked absolutely phenomenal. That is a little bit of a dye job he had there, but you know, hey, to each his own. You know, a little hair for men, never hurt anybody. But
Not at all.
great to see him. He came out when he twirled his finger in the air, though. I was very optimistic that he was going to pick Dean up and give him a DDT, which I would have loved to have seen him give him the DDT. But it, just brought out the albino Damien. But yeah, Jake. First time I ever came across Jake, it was on an independent show. He was booked to work one of our shows, but he no-showed us, and it was due to his habitual drug issues. They documented that heavily in Beyond the Mat film, and for many years, I mean, the man really, really abused himself. I mean, I know people personally that have never kicked that habit. They just keep on going down that same path, and you gotta take your hat off to Jake for finally waking up, getting this shit together, and hats off to DDP too, because if it wasn't for him, Jake probably would be in the obituaries along with as of currently Scott Hall.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and speaking of old school Raw, I mean, I was pretty happy with the old school stuff that they did with the legends they brought in. Like you said, it's always cool to see DiBiase and Mike Rotundo doing
Bob
IRS
Backlund.
and Bob Backlund, yeah. So it's just nice just to see those guys, and this is the way that they should be used. Bring them out for like a feel good moment. Have them get involved a little bit, but don't have them do anything too strenuous. Don't like book them in long matches or anything like that. Just have them be special referees and little guest appearances, because it's nice for people who've been fans for a long time to see those legends. And but yes, I mean, Jake was there. It would have been nice. I mean, to book DDP, to bring in Scott Hall, just for an appearance, just for one of those backstage things, just have, like the way they did DiBiase and Nikolai and IRS, where like Big E was just walking past them on his way to the ring.
They did have a moment where DDP and Booker T were backstage, and DDP had a big moment where he promoted his DDP yoga, and he promoted he promoted the DVDs, and he was trying to show Booker T. I mean, the man took his leg and stretched it almost up to his head. Very impressive. And Booker T was trying to do it, but he only bring his knee up to his chest. And, he said he didn't need DDP yoga because he had Booker T yoga. But, it was just a whole spot there where they did promote his yoga. And then, of course, it ended with Ron Simmons entering, watching Booker T try to do what DDP could do with his catch mark, damn. Which, which is funny all in all, but I don't remember the days when Ron Simmons could talk.
Yeah.
It's like, that's all you do is come in and say, damn. I would love to hear you say more than just that, because I love Ron Simmons. I mean,
Me too.
really recognized as one of the first black heavyweight champions in the United States, when he won the WCW belt.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I love Ron Simmons back in the WCW days when he was when he was teaming with Butch Reed as Doom for a start, and then they broke up and he became a good guy, and he eventually was the first black guy to win the World Heavyweight Championship, and that was during my like formative wrestling fan days, and I remember that very fondly, and. But yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I should probably tell everybody. I usually watch the abbreviated version of Raw that they put on Hulu Plus. So I don't watch the 3-hour Raw. I don't know if I could take like 3 full hours of wrestling every night or every week, and I don't know if my wife could take it either. So I completely missed that DDP spot. I'm glad that you said that. I'm glad that they had DDP on there. That makes me feel good, because it seems like when they do these Legends shows, even though it's always great to see the guys from the 80s, it does seem like they leave out a lot of like the Monday Night Wars Attitude Era type guys. Like you always see Sergeant Slaughter, you always see Piper and Flair, and that's awesome. It's great to see those guys, but you don't see as much of like DDP or the Outsiders or Vader or Sid or those guys, that were big from like the right before the Monday Night War era to into the Attitude Era.
Little Marty Jannetty.
Marty Jannetty, yeah.
We're always dusting off Shawn Michaels. Where's Marty Jannetty?
Right. But yeah, so Raw last night was old school. I joked. I said to somebody. I think when we were at Doc and I both attended the same New Year's Eve party, and we were there. And another friend of ours, Dan Harris, who's also has a history in the wrestling business. I was talking to him about old school Raw, and anticipating it. And I said, if they really wanted to get old school, why not let Pat Patterson book it? So it would be like a good show. Um, but that's just bitchy wrestling fans. I mean, the what I watched of it, I don't really have any big huge complaints. I mean, it wasn't a bad show, and I could bitch about like how they're handling Daniel Bryan all week long, but that's just one part of the show. A lot of the rest of the show is actually not that bad.
Yeah, it's a specialty show, and usually on specialty shows you expect them to see every single good guy win a match.
Yeah.
They threw a few curveballs. They threw the bad guys, a few matches last night, which was nice to see because I'm always that heel fan. I want to see everything go in the heels way. I love Randy Orton that he's now a heel and that he is just the only champion, which is what the WWE actually needed for so long. As soon as they broke the two brands, you should have done that. And there's only one more belt to go. I'm waiting for that one.
Oh, the uh, unifying the U.S. and the Intercontinental. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Which one would you keep though? Because
Well,
it is the WWE, and to me, I've always been that fan, and the Intercontinental title means a lot to me. Probably one of my favorite belts I've ever seen. I love the old
oh
Intercontinental
yeah, it's a
title.
beautiful looking belt. Absolutely.
And you got the U.S. Championship,
Yeah.
which means more than just like entertainment wrestling. It really means actual professional wrestling guys held that belt. Not
Oh
just
yeah.
not just entertainers. These guys are purebred pro wrestlers.
Yeah.
So
And Ambrose actually alluded to that in the Piper's Pit thing when he talked about Roddy Piper being a former U.S. champion, which they almost never mention on
mhm.
WWE TV. Like that's because that was from his pre WWF days.
Well, I'm not sure, but Steve's froze up here on my screen. Are you still hanging with me, Steve? Because I lost Pete.